Hello, I am, if you didn't know, demisexual, and for a long time I had never even heard of that word. I didn't know what it was. So let's start there. Demisexual is a part of the asexual spectrum, which, yes, it is a spectrum if you didn't know, and the demisexual part of it, or at least in my personal experience, is where you don't experience sexual attraction to people unless you already have a strong emotional connection to that particular person. And people who are demisexual can also be gay or bisexual or biromantic or straight. I happen to be straight and demisexual. We're going to be focusing though on demisexuality in this video, as the name suggests, because the thing about demisexuality is it's not very well known, not very widely spoken about, and it is seriously underrepresented in LGBTQIA+ literature. So I wanted to do this video reading some books with demi-rep in them and letting you know my thoughts, because I have read some really great books before with demi-rep in, and I've read some really great books with demi-rep in that doesn't do the demi-rep particularly well. This video is not about those books. If you want to discuss that with me, feel free to do that down in the comments. I have read particularly romance books where there's an insta-lust plotline with a supposedly demisexual character. I'm just like, I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense. A demisexual person is not going to instantly want to have sex with someone the day that they meet them. It's just, I suppose it could happen, but in my experience, that could never be me. So anyway, I'm hoping to find some really great books in this video, and I have a TBR. So this first sort of shot, as it were, is I'm going to be talking you through my TBR for this video. So there are a couple of books that I already own that I potentially want to read, so let me just grab those. So the first book that I'm thinking about reading, I'm not talking about reading it first, we'll get to that, is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, which would be a reread for me. I read this, I can't actually remember how long ago, quite a few years ago now, and it was around the time that I was finding out what demisexuality is and realising that, hey, I'm not just weird, this is actually a thing. So I feel like now would actually be a really good time to revisit this story and see how I feel about the demi character Aled now. I have come across Aled in some Heartstopper, but he's more of a feature in this particular book. The only issue is that this is YA, and I am having a little bit of trouble with YA at the moment, but I love Alice Oseman, so I feel like I'm probably safe with this one, particularly because it is a reread. So I'm thinking about picking this one up. And then the other one that I have on my physical TBR that I'm thinking about picking up, but I'm a little bit hesitant about, is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. The reason I'm hesitant about this is because it's the first book in what is going to eventually be quite a long series, but it isn't a complete series yet. I can't remember off the top of my head how many books are in this series so far, but it isn't finished, is the point. And I've been really interested in reading this one for quite some time, but this is supposed to be the year, 2023 is supposed to be the year where I am reading and binging series and finishing them, which I would not be able to do with this because it is not finished. So I don't know how I feel about this one, but the main character is demisexual and I've been wanting to read this book for ages, and it's fantasy. So it feels like it's right, but I don't know. Jury is out on whether or not I am going to read that one. The others I don't have physical copies of. One that I want to mention quickly, because I don't think I'll be able to read it for this video because it's got a very long hold on it at the library, so I don't think it'll come in time because I'm planning to read all of these this week. because hopefully you'll be seeing this video on Valentine's Day. So that is Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. That one is a non-fiction book, so we'll see if I manage to get to that. I want to read it anyway, so if I don't get to it during this video, that's fine, I will read it at some point. The next one I'm thinking about reading is Letters to Half Moon Street by Sarah Wallace. I have access to the audiobook of this one on Scribd, and it's only 6 hours long, so a pretty short one. I don't really know anything about what it's about, but I kind of like going into books that way. I was interested in it when I added it to the list and I haven't looked at it again since, and that's going to be the case with the rest of these as well. Next is The Dragon of Ynys by Minerva Cerridwen, which is also on Scribd, but it's an ebook and it's 99 pages. There isn't an audiobook, it doesn't exist, but it's very short, so I feel like I can still manage that. I don't read physically alone much anymore, but that one's quite short, so it shouldn't take me too long. The problem I have with reading physically is it takes me so long that I tend not to enjoy the stories, but with something that short I should be okay. Then I have Once More with Chutzpah by Hayley Neal. This one looks like a contemporary romance, probably YA, so again a little bit concerned about whether or not I'll get on with it on that basis, but I have it on the list, and again it's very short, it's only 6 hours long, so I listen at 2.5 speed. It's not a very long book. Then we have How to Be a Movie Star by TJ Klune, which is actually the second book in a series, but I think it's one of those companion romance type things that it doesn't actually matter if you read them out of order, or at least I'm hoping so. Again, I have access to this one on Scribd, and this one's a bit longer. This one is a 12-hour audiobook, but I'm pretty sure that this one is adult, so that's good news. I did also want to read The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese, but there's two issues with that. One, it's not really seasonally appropriate anymore because it's February, not December, and two, it's not going to be available at my library in time, and it's not the kind of thing I would, it's very short, so I wouldn't want to use a credit on it, and it's not on Scribd, so I probably won't get to that one, but I've got it on my tag thing on Libby, so I'll probably just get to it in December of 2023. And then the final one that I have on the list is called The Princess Who Didn't Eat Cake, which is by Lynn O'Connor, and it sounds really fun. I hadn't heard, most of these I hadn't heard of before. I had to do a little bit of digging to find them, which is kind of the point of this video, right, is that none of these are, with the exception of these two that I already own, none of these are mainstream, none of these are heavily talked about, whoops, and that's part of the problem. But I came across The Princess Who Didn't Eat Cake last night while I was doing a bit more research for this video, and it just sounds great, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Again, it is one that is not available as an audiobook, but it's only 57 pages long, so a super quick read. So then we have to think about, well, what order am I going to read these in? And I'm really not sure, because I want to get started with these reads, but it is currently 9:15 on a school night, and so I'm going to be getting ready to go to bed very well, basically as soon as I finish filming this clip. And then tomorrow I'm actually teaching for 6 hours, so I'm not going to have much time during the day. Really, I'll only have time to read on my way to and from work, and I'm going to be really tired. So I feel like I need an audiobook rather than a physical read, just because of how my day is going to go tomorrow, and I've got a little bit of time to do some reading now, and I feel like a reread would be a good move given all of that. So I am tempted to actually start here and reread Radio Silence, which is only 10 hours as well, so it's a fairly short one, and also it's familiar, so it's not gonna, you know, exhaust me when I'm having an exhausting day tomorrow anyway. I think if I do read the bone season. It will probably be towards the end of this list because it's the chunkiest, and I will tend to have a bit more time towards the end of the week than I do at the beginning of the week. So yeah, I feel like Radio Silence might be the place to start. So maybe that's what we're going to do. I'm going to reread Radio Silence first, and I guess that can be, it's not really the place that started it all, but maybe it is. I can't remember. Maybe it is the place that I learned about demisexuality for the first time, in which case it's very apt to be reading it first in this video. So we're just going to pretend, even though I can't actually remember if that's the case, we're just going to pretend that that's the case. Yeah, that's what we'll do. So I will check in once I have read a little bit of Radio Silence. And yes, I am listening to the audiobook. Yes, on script. Okay, it has been a long day, so I'm not the most presentable just now, but I have not updated this vlog for several days. In fact, I think I started this vlog on Monday and it's now Thursday and I haven't spoken to you at all because I've had a really bad mental health week and I really was not in a place to be filming, but things are going a little bit better now. Don't ask me why I had a mental health issue. I don't really know. It wasn't really helped by my first read, if I'm being totally honest. Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Not because I don't love it, I do love it. It was a reread, and it was just as compulsive of a read this time as it was the first time I read it. I think the first time I read it in one day in a couple of sittings. It's not a short book. It's not long either, but it's not, you know, super short. It's just a little over 400 pages. So, you know, it's not necessarily a quick read, but it is a compulsive read. But also it is quite sad and or melancholy, and so my already in the tank mood wasn't necessarily improved by this. But I am glad that I reread this because it has demisexual representation on page. It's clear that Aled is demi, and it is also, and that's clear from fairly early on, and also it is, he confirms himself later in the book that he is demisexual once he figures that out for himself, and I really enjoyed that. I liked revisiting this first experience that I had with that conversation, so I'm glad that I reread this. It's just a shame that it put me in, well, I already wasn't in the best mood, right? So I'm not going to blame the book, but it didn't help. Then, because I was kind of trying to get out of my little funk, I took a little bit of a break. I'm not talking a long break. I finished that on Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday evening I started Letters to Half Moon Street. And I try usually not to post about books that I'm doing for these kinds of reading challenge videos on any other kind of social media because I don't want to give it away. But I could not help myself posting on Instagram the minute I finished this book because I just loved it so much. It was perfection, and I have never felt so seen by a book in my entire life. I finished it this morning. I started it last night, to be honest. I wish I had started it earlier in the day so I could have read the whole thing in one go. I already want to reread it. I wanted to reread it the minute it finished. Loved it. I listened to the audiobook, but I did purchase the Kindle ebook as well so that I could follow along when I had the opportunity to do that, and I have since also ordered the print copy of the book because this is a new favourite for me without question. So this book is told in an epistolary style. I haven't read many books like that, and most of the ones that I haven't loved, with some exceptions, but this one I loved the epistolary format. It largely follows the communications of Gavin, and it takes place in 1800s London, but it's a different version of 1800s London. Firstly, there is magic, which Gavin can partake of, and also all the LGBTQIA+ spectrum is known, acknowledged, accepted. It's all just totally, perfectly normal, and you really just need to tell people who you are and they will assist you in finding whatever kind of match it is that you're looking for. So the same as where you watch usual period dramas or read usual period dramas, the women have the coming out and they're there and they're looking for a husband. Well, in this version of London, everybody comes out when they come of age, and if they are so inclined, they can find a husband or a wife, regardless of what gender they are, what gender they were born with, whether they are non-binary. It was beautiful, but also Gavin is bookish and an introvert and really struggles in social situations and is demisexual, and I just felt so incredibly seen by this book. Now granted, I have not grown up in 1800s London, but I do live in London, and I have not grown up in a world where the LGBT spectrum is as accepted as it was in this book, but I cannot overstate how much I enjoyed this book and how beneficial. It really helped to lift my mood massively. I should probably say that this is a romance. I was so invested in the romantic plotline, the epistolary format. It's not just letters between Gavin and the love interest, it's Gavin and his sister, who also is his best friend, Gavin and his slightly wayward younger brother, Gavin and his incredibly domineering and annoying older brother, Gavin and his parents, Gavin and various friends. It just is so fantastic, and I know I'm gushing, but it's wonderful, and it's self-published, and it's really quite short. I listened to the audiobook through Scribd. It is available there. The ebook is very, very cheap on Amazon. I bought it for 77 pence. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Please do yourself a favour and read this book. The fact that I found this book through doing this video just brings my heart so much joy. I love it. And yeah, it really has motivated me to want to come back to actually filming this video, because I felt so low at the beginning of the week, and this book has just been really special. And it is actually the first in a series, which I didn't realise either, and I don't think the second book, which is the only other one that's out at the moment, although the third book is out at the end of this month, I don't think either of those fit within this particular genre, although I think that Gavin is still present in those other books, so technically I could read them for this video, and maybe I will if I get time, but regardless, once I finish the reading for this video, I will be reading that next, and I can't wait. I'm very, very excited. So that was just, it really like reinvigorated my excitement for this video. And then the next book that I started was actually the non-fiction, which I didn't think I was going to be able to read for this video. And it was so funny because I filmed the intro on Monday evening, and I said that I didn't think that the audiobook would come in time from the library because there was a 3-week waiting list. But then as I was getting ready for work the following morning, Tuesday morning, the audiobook came in. So somebody must have finished it early and the next person must have skipped, you know, pushed the button to deliver later, because it came through, which is just perfection. And I started that on my way home because the next books I want to read are the physical ones, I think. So I started that because usually with non-fiction I like to have it on the go at the same time as another book. Now, I started it, I didn't realise before I started listening to it that Natalie Nordis is the narrator for this one, which is fantastic because I love her narration, and I recognised her voice, of course, the minute the audiobook started, and I was like, oh, excellent, one of my favourite narrators as well. And it's so great, I am loving it so much. So it's not specifically about demisexuality, it is about the asexual spectrum. There is a little bit of discussion about aromanticism as well, but that's not really the focus. The focus is on asexuality and what that is, and how it looks different for different people, and what the spectrum of asexuality looks like. Demisexuality is mentioned. I should point out, actually, Letters to Half Moon Street, it is clear that Gavin is demisexual, but that's not specified on page, so there isn't the term demisexuality or demisexual isn't used at all, but it was very clear to me that was Gavin's experience. So back to Ace. It explores, there's a little bit of discussion of demisexuality, there's a little bit of discussion about grey sexuality. The focus though is on asexuality in general, of which those two things are part of that spectrum, and it's also looking at both a feminist, I'm not, you know, I'm only about 40% of the way through, so I don't know what the rest, I'll tell you later, but it's focusing on the interaction between feminism and asexuality and the impact that good feminism and bad feminism has on how people feel if they are on the asexual spectrum. It also talks slightly a little bit about toxic masculinity and how actually being asexual is possibly even harder for men, because there's this expectation placed on men that they should always want to have sex, and that isn't necessarily the case. And what Angela Chen has done is she's also interviewed other individuals and provided their accounts as well as her own accounts, their perspectives as well as her own perspectives. So far it's really well researched. I'm really enjoying it. I'm already thinking I want to buy a copy of this one too. Honestly, I am having such a great experience with this reading challenge, and so much even better of an experience than I anticipated. So this video is going to be long, I can tell that already, but to be honest with you, I don't even care, because I'm just having such a great time, and representation matters. It really, really, truly does. And I think it's easy to say that, but until you experience it for yourself, I don't think you fully understand it. And I don't think I had fully understood how important it is. I understood that it was important, but I hadn't really fully appreciated how important and what the impact can be until I started this challenge, and more so until I started the new books. And so obviously the reread, I've already had that experience once before. I am loving this. I am loving it so much. I'm thinking that the next one I'm going to read is The Princess Who Didn't Eat Cake. I think that's going to be my next read, which is a physical one. So I will come back to you once I have made some more progress in Ace, and once I have read that. It's so short that I won't do an in-between. Hopefully I don't leave so long between check-ins next time, because it's led to this one being exceptionally long. But I'm having such a just incredible time, and I really hope that this continues, because I am loving this feeling right now of being so in love with these books. So I am going to stop gushing now, and I will see you when I have something else to tell you. Okay, progress has been made on this TBR. I have finished reading my non-fiction, which was Ace by Angela Chen, and I really enjoyed it, actually. I found it very, very interesting. It also discusses relationships and love and sex just generally, not just through an asexual spectrum. And also it looks at intersectionality, it looks at asexual black people, asexual disabled people, and asexual trans people. It was interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it if those are subjects that you find of any interest. Since then I have also read The Princess Who Didn't Eat Cake. I didn't update you kind of partway through that because it's so short, and actually the vast majority of the book was the author's note at the end of the actual literary fairy tale, which is what it is. And I didn't love this one actually. It was fine, but it was a little on the nose, and essentially, as you may have gathered, the cake is used as a metaphor for sex, and the metaphor was just a little bit heavy-handed, I felt like, so it kind of lost me a little bit. So I didn't love it. I think it's possibly a useful introduction to demisexuality if you're young and you don't know much about it, but I didn't get a huge amount out of it. And there was also, it could have done with a little bit of copy editing, to be honest. There were some issues in the writing, but that's okay. I'm not mad that I read it, but it's not a new favourite. And now I'm reading How to Be a Movie Star by TJ Klune, and it is very strange. The protagonist is Hosea, or Josie, and he wants to be a movie star, as the title might suggest, and he also is quite often stoned. And it's humorous, and he's demisexual, and he meets a monster porn novelist who is also writing a film, and he's going to audition to be in that film. I'm guessing that he's going to get into the film, and it's just a bit weird, but it is funny. Again, I don't think it's going to be a new favourite, but I am enjoying myself because of the humorous elements of it. But I hope that the plot starts moving forward soon, because I think if it doesn't, the book is going to lose me and I might end up DNFing it, which I don't ideally want to do, but I will DNF it if I'm not enjoying it. And I feel like I'm over the humour now, so we need to move on from that, you know. So that's where I'm at. The next one I'm going to read after this is probably going to be The Dragon of Ynys, or maybe I'll just read that tomorrow regardless of whether I finish this one today. I'm pretty sure I'll finish this one today. And then I've just got that one and Once More with Chutzpah to read. I don't think that I'm going to get time to read the Bone Season because it's currently the 11th and it's the evening of the 11th, and I want to get this video up on the 14th. So I do not have too much longer to get this reading done. But so far, so good. But I feel like the best books were towards the beginning of this project, and now I feel a little bit in the middle with this one. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm not ruling out DNFing this one if I'm being honest right now. Sorry that I'm almost always in the exact same spot when I update these vlogs. I just have very limited places in my apartment where I can update because there's nothing interesting to look at in the background in my bedroom, and the main room, the same is true there, but also it's a little bit echoey. So you always just get a different angle in this same room. So sorry if that's a bit boring, but I do have some updates for you. I have DNF'd 2 books since the last time we spoke. So I mentioned before that I wasn't sure if I was going to keep reading How to Become a Movie Star, or How to Be a Movie Star, sorry. And I think that it wasn't actually. I think I said at that time that it was because not much was happening. I don't think that's actually quite right. I think actually the problem was it's just a very one-note kind of book. The character is very flippant and they remain very flippant throughout the story, and it's just a little bit monotonal, and so I was getting a bit bored of it, to be honest. Not because I wasn't interested in the things that were going on, although I wasn't hugely interested in the things that were going on, but just because I wasn't really feeling any connection or growth with the character at all. So I decided to take a break from the book and start one of the other books for this vlog, which was Once More with Chutzpah, and I read the first couple of chapters of that and DNF'd it because it was YA contemporary, which I did know going into it, and I did suspect that that would mean that it wouldn't be a good fit for me, because I do tend, if I'm going to read a contemporary/contemporary romance, most of the time, unless like Radio Silence it's a book that I already have a connection with because I'm rereading it, most of the time the kinds of issues that the character is dealing with are not things that I connect with anymore, and so aren't going to work for me. And that was the case with this one. The authorial voice was just a little bit young, which is normal because it's a YA contemporary book. Sometimes with fantasy that is okay, but with contemporary it's a little bit of a harder sell for me these days, and it just wasn't going to work for me, so I decided to DNF that one. I had already seen a little bit of reference to the demi-rep, so if you are interested in reading books with demi-rep and you are not bothered by a younger contemporary read, then I would recommend that one. Worth giving a go, but it just wasn't the right fit for me personally, so I DNF'd that one. And then I decided to do something I don't often do, or don't ever do, which was I went and I read or listened to the last chapter and the epilogue of How to Be a Movie Star, because I was like, maybe it's going to get somewhere that I'm going to enjoy, and I'm not so worried about spoilers because it's essentially a romance, right? So I know what the ending's going to be anyway. So I thought, let me read the end and then maybe that will interest me more in the journey. And sure enough, the character's voice hadn't really changed at all, and I realised that I wasn't going to find the rest of the story particularly stimulating, and so I just decided that I was going to DNF it. And it's a shame because I had actually read probably about 50% of that one, but I just wasn't enjoying myself, and so even though it was very clear on page, demisexual rep, it was being done pretty well, I thought, it just wasn't a book for me, unfortunately. So again, if it sounds interesting to you and you think that kind of flippant kind of narrator isn't going to be a problem for you, then by all means give it a go, but it just didn't work for me in the longer term, unfortunately. So that left me with just the Dragon of Ynys left to read, and I kind of wanted more to read than just that, so I decided to go ahead and read the sequel to Letters to Half Moon Street, which only barely meets the criteria for this on a technicality because Gavin does appear a couple of times for like a sentence each time in that sequel, so it doesn't strictly speaking count, but I did enjoy it, not as much as Letters to Half Moon Street, but the representation, sorry, that was the word I was searching for there. The representation in that one continues much on the same vein as the first one. So there is lesbian representation, there is demisexual representation barely because Gavin is there, there is non-binary representation, there is straight representation, there is, what else, asexual. I think there's some others, but I can't think of them just now. It's pretty broad in terms of, aromantic as well. The main character is aromantic. Sorry, don't know how I forgot that one. Anyway, lots of representation in it, and I did enjoy myself, but it doesn't, strictly speaking, meet the criteria for this video, but I thought I would mention it anyway. So now I am currently reading The Dragon of Ynys. It is currently Monday the 13th, so I do want to finish off this vlog today so that I can post it in time for you tomorrow. Where am I in this book? Probably like, what, halfway through? 52% of the way through. So I will finish this today without issue. It's very short anyway. I do have to say that I haven't come across the demisexual rep yet, which is concerning me slightly because we're halfway through the book. There is other kinds of queer rep so far, but not demi, at least not on page. So I hope that that's going to come up at some point, but so far it hasn't, and I do kind of wish that it was more of a feature of the book. In terms of the actual story, it reads very much like a literary fairy tale. I mentioned literary fairy tales before, if you don't know what that is. It's a fairy tale that has been written. The original telling of the fairy tale is in a written format rather than it being a fairy tale that has come from oration. So that's a literary fairy tale, and I'd say this one is that as well. It's not the most well-written thing that I've ever read. The dialogue in particular is a little bit, it feels like it's been written rather than feeling genuine. I don't know how else to express that. So I'm not loving it, but it's okay. I feel like the highlight of this video was Letters to Half Moon Street, which I already read at the beginning of the video, so that's a little bit of a shame, but I will check back in properly once I have finished this one. I did do some more research last night and found another book that I could potentially read, which is called Never Been Kissed, but I don't think that I have time to read that now. And it's also YA romance, so, well, it's new adult romance, but having read the first chapter, it reads kind of more on the YA side, so I don't know if it's going to be a good fit anyway. And also from a review that I listened to, because it was a podcast review on YouTube, it actually appears to be a suggestion of a metaphor, actually is the term that they used for demisexual rep, rather than on page demisexual rep, which isn't quite what I was looking for, albeit Letters to Half Moon Street doesn't have the term demisexual used in it. It is very clearly a demi character that is the protagonist there. So I don't know, I don't think I'm going to get time for that one anyway, but I might try and do a little bit more research and see if I can get an answer on whether it actually is or it isn't, so that I can at the very least let you know whether it's one to look for. And I will come back to you once I have done that and once I have finished The Dragon of Ynys, and we can round out this vlog. Okay, so I have finished reading The Dragon of Ynys, and it is totally my own bad. I went back and looked at the list, which was an Instagram post, which I will try to find a way to link in the description of this video, by the way, because it has lots of ace spec recommendations for books. This particular book, The Dragon of Ynys, was on the demisexual page, but it had a note arrow ace on it. I thought that that meant that it was arrow ace and demisexual, but I think actually it was just arrow ace and there wasn't space left on the arrow ace page for it, so it's not demisexual, it's arrow ace. Apologies for that. If you don't know what that means, it's aromantic, asexual, so individuals on the ace spectrum who do not feel sexual attraction or romantic attraction, and the protagonist, one of the protagonists in Dragon of Ynys, is arrow ace. So that was my bad. I was looking for representation that was not supposed to be there in the first place. But anyway, I still didn't love the way that the story was written. It was really good in terms of representation, lots of queer representation just in general. There's a nice afterword from the author that explains that the original version that was published by a publishing house that no longer exists had some problems with the trans and non-binary representation, and that was corrected in this version, so I thought that that was good. I didn't love the writing, to be honest, is my problem, and I think also because it's a short form narrative, so it's a full length story. It's not a short story, but I'd still say it's kind of novella length, and it's from an author who predominantly writes short fiction, and it read that way. It read like a short story that had been extended a bit, and so I didn't super love this one, unfortunately, but I am still glad that I read it. So to summarise what I have read in this video, I reread Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I realised I could have also reread The Sound of Stars by Alechia, which is a sci-fi contemporary-ish style book with demi-rep that I have already read and really enjoyed, but I didn't and I don't have time to now. Then I read Letters to Half Moon Street by Sarah Wallace, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved that book so much. I look forward to rereading it one day. That one means a lot to me. It's going to be a new favourite. The characters spoke to me in so many different ways, and it really helped to cheer me up when I was having a bit of a bad week. So I really enjoyed that one. Sadly, as I mentioned before, I DNF'd How to Be a Movie Star by TJ Klune, and also once more with Chutzpah by Hayley Neal. I also read The Princess Who Didn't Eat Cake by Lynn E. O'Connor, which again was short literary fairy tale, which I also didn't super love. I can't remember the full title of this, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen, which was a non-fiction book that I really enjoyed and found very interesting, and had really great conversations, not just about asexuality and demisexuality, but also just about relationships and love and intersectionality in general. And then the final book that I read was The Dragon of Ynys by Minerva Cerridwen. And when I double checked that post that I mentioned earlier, Never Been Kissed is actually on that list, but it's down as a suspect, so I'm not going to force myself to read as much of it as I can for this video because it doesn't quite fit with the theme. I think the main point of this video and the main takeaway from this video, I suppose, is that one, representation is really important. When you understand yourself better, that helps you, and when you can feel represented in media, that helps you, and it can be really meaningful. And I think that I said already, I don't think I'd appreciated the extent that went to until I read Letters to Half Moon Street and felt so incredibly seen by it. So I think that that's important, but I also, part of the reason that I wanted to do this video, and part of the message of this video, I guess, is partly to educate people about what demisexuality is. It's partially to send the message that those of us in the asexual community are part of the queer community, and we're a part of the queer community that often gets forgotten about, and demisexuals are a part of the ace community that often get forgotten about, because we're neither asexual nor aromantic, but nor are we allosexual or alloromantic. We are somewhere in the middle, which, you know, asexuality is already in the middle in terms of queerness, and then demi is in the middle of that, so it can feel very alienating to be a demisexual person, and I can only imagine that demi-romantics feel even more that way. And I think the amount of time that I spent researching books that I can actually read for this video is demonstrative of part of the problem, and not all of them worked for me. That isn't a problem in and of itself, because I've still been able to recommend them to you. But I guess I just wanted to make this video to bring some more visibility and some more discussion to the existence of demisexuality and the asexual spectrum more generally, but more specifically demisexuality, and to really highlight the fact that there isn't a lot of representation for demisexuality in fiction. That which does exist is difficult to find, and that which doesn't exist, it's not a huge part of the story. None of these things that I read, or read most of, or read some of, none of them are about being demisexual, whilst there are lots of books that are about being gay, being a lesbian, being, even to a certain extent, being asexual. There are lots of books, some of which I have actually read, which are really focused on the asexuality of the main character, but that is just not the case with demisexual books that I have read, and some of them get demisexuality wrong. None of the books that I read for this video, thankfully, but I think I already mentioned that I have read books in the past that have purported to have demisexual rep, and then they have an insta-love trope, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, but that's not how demisexuality works. If you want to have a demisexual character who has sex with someone really quickly because they feel pressure to do that, and they feel pressure to conform with societal norms, but they're not actually feeling it, fair enough. But where I've read it before, the character who is supposedly demisexual has been really into having sex with this person they've literally met several hours ago, and I'm just like, no, sorry, that's not how demisexuality works, actually. And it can be frustrating when authors get that representation really wrong as well, and it can be just as frustrating as when it doesn't exist. So yeah, I think I just wanted this video to bring some visibility to this identity, and I don't think it's necessarily going to make a difference, but if you are a writer and you are writing any kind of story and you want to include a demisexual character, then please think about doing that and reach out to demisexual people to make sure that you get that representation right. I'm very happy to take questions. I am not a monolith, of course, but I can very happily share my own personal experience. And if you have any books that you have read that contain demi rep, please, please, please let me know in the comments, because I really want to read them. And it can also be a resource. So if you have any particular recommendations you want to make, even if they're ace recommendations just generally, drop them down in the comments so that we can use this video as a resource for sharing recommendations. And that's all I wanted to say, really. I know this is probably quite a long vlog, but I hope that you have enjoyed it and found some value in it. Happy Valentine's Day, I suppose. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks. Bye.